So to make the vest, you're going to need, first of all, your hook. Today I'm using a 4.5mm hook. You'll also need about 200 grams of your main colour. I'm using the Signet Deluxe Aran yarn. And then I'm also using this kind of deep red double knit yarn. You'll also need some measuring tape, some scissors, and maybe a few stitch markers if you want to. You are also going to need some buttons. I'm using these like black and gold vintage style ones from a charity shop, and I'm using about 3 of these buttons, and then I'm also going to be using a sewing needle. So you're going to want to start off by taking the measurement around your waist, and depending on how tight or loose you want the vest to be will depend on if you want to add or take away any more inches. So my waist was about 34 inches. It was a little bit looser than my actual waist measurement because I didn't want it to be too tight. So I have a waist measurement for this vest of 34 inches. To get your back panel measurement, you're going to want to divide your circumference of your waist by 2, which gives me 17. So I know that I need to make a chain that is 17 inches once I do the back panel. For the front panel, you're going to want to divide your back panel measurement by 2. So 17 divided by 2 is 8.5. So I know that I need to make a chain that is roughly 8.5 inches for the front panel. Another thing to consider if you are choosing to do ribbing for your vest is to allow an amount of inches for that ribbing. So I want my ribbing to be about 1.5 inches. So I need to incorporate that into my measurements. For example, for the front panel, my measurement was 8.5 inches. However, to incorporate the ribbing measurement into that, which was 1.5 inches, that means that I need to minus 1.5 from 8.5, which gives me 7. So that actually means that for the main part of the front panel, I'm going to make a chain that is 7 inches long, and then that allows for 1.5 inches for the ribbing to go next to it. So just to give you a visual idea, I have made one front panel already, and I'm just going to show you exactly how I measured it. So as you can see here, my front panel roughly measures 7 inches across, so I just made a chain that was 7 inches. The other measurements that you're going to want to take is the actual length of the vest that you want to be. Again, make sure you incorporate the ribbing into that. So I wanted my vest to be about 15.5 inches, which means that the actual front panel was 14 inches. You're then going to want to measure from the top of your shoulder down to the bottom of the armpit, which was about 7 inches, and then you're also going to want to measure from the top of the shoulder to where you want the first button to sit. So for me that was about 8 inches across, and you just want to kind of keep these measurements on you so that you can kind of refer to them as you're working on the front panel. So starting with my main colour, I'm going to make a slip knot. And then I'm going to make a chain that equals 7 inches because that is my front panel measurement with the ribbing not included. So I've got my 30 chains plus 1 chain for the turning chain, and I'm going to start row 1 by yarning over and making 1/2 double crochet into the back bump of the second chain. So as you can see here, we have the first chain and here's the second chain. We're going to flip the chain over, so we're twisting it, and we're going to find that back bump. As you can see there's the back bump. I'm going to insert my hook in there, yarn over and pull up a loop. So there's 3 loops on the hook, yarn over, pull through all 3 loops. So that is a 1/2 double crochet. I'm going to continue this all the way along into each chain, each back bump. So I'm going to yarn over, insert the hook into the next back bump, yarn over, pull up a loop, 3 loops on the hook, yarn over, pull through all 3 loops. So I'm going to continue this all the way across into each back bump. So for the next row, I'm going to chain 1 and turn the work, and I'm going to weave in this tail as I go. I'm going to make 1/2 double crochet into that front loop. So as you can see here, we have all these V's going down the row, and we want to pick up the one that is closest to us when we turn the work. So I'm going to yarn over, pick up the tail, and then I'm going into the first stitch, and I'm just picking up the front loop right there, and then I'm going to make my 1/2 double crochet as normal. So I'm going to continue to make 1/2 double crochet into the front loop only all the way across. So I'm just yarning over, inserting the hook into the front loop, including the tail as well, and then making that half double crochet. So I'm going to continue this all the way across the row. So you're going to want to continue row 2 until you have reached the bottom of your armpit. So for me that was about 6.5 inches, and then I will come back for row 17 where we will start to decrease the work. I just wanted to quickly add that when you start the next row, which is row 3, you will be working in the back loop, but this is technically still the same stitch as row 2, but it's just the back loop that it becomes. In the previous row it was the front loop because it's the closest one to you, but when you turn the work it then becomes the second loop away from you. So you want to make sure that you are always crocheting in the exact same loop, but it just might mean that depending on the row you are on, it might be the front loop and it might be the back loop, but it is still the same loop all the way up to your armpit. You're basically just going to want to do rows of half double crochet in the back loop until you reach the bottom of your armpit. So I've just finished my 16 rows of half double crochet in the back loop only. We're now going to be working on the decrease section of the vest. So as you can see at either end, the stitches start to decrease as we continue up. So to start row 17, I'm going to be making a half double crochet in the back loop only, as we've been doing before, but we're going to be making a decrease at both ends. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start my first half double crochet in the back loop, so yarn over, insert the stitch into the back loop, yarn over, pull up a loop. So normally here we would yarn over and pull through all 3 loops, but I'm going to start the next half double crochet in the next stitch, so yarn over, insert, yarn over, pull up a loop, and you should have 5 loops on the hook, and then you're going to yarn over and pull through all 5 loops, and that brings 2 stitches into 1. I'm then going to make a half double crochet in the back loop only into each stitch, and I'm going to stop right before the last 2, and I'm going to make a second decrease there. So I now have 2 stitches left, and I'm going to make my next decrease. So I'm going to just basically half double crochet the 2 stitches together, like that. So row 17 will have 2 decreases at either end. We're now going to start row 18, and for row 18, or whatever row this is for you, but the second decrease row is only going to be a decrease at the inside edge. So where the buttons are going to sit, that edge there is where we're going to decrease for the second decrease row. So I'm going to chain 1 and start row 18. I'm going to make 1 half double crochet into the front loop of each stitch across, and then when I get to the final 2 stitches I'm going to make a decrease there. So basically the first decrease row is a decrease at either edge, and the second decrease row is only a decrease at the button edge. So I'm going to complete that now. So I now have 2 stitches left, so this one here and this one here. I'm going to make a decrease, so just half double crochet the 2 stitches together in the front loop, like so, and that is the second decrease row. So now I'm going to alternate between row 17 and row 18 until I reach row 32. However, this might be different for you. You want to continue decreasing both sides for the first row, and then only the button side for the second row. Keep alternating between those rows until you reach about 1 inch before your vest panel length. So remember, at the beginning you decided your vest length measurement. Mine was 15.5 inches long, which means that I wanted to leave 1.5 inches for the ribbing, which means that my vest panel will be 14 inches in length. So I'm going to continue decreasing until I have 13 inches of work, and then we will finish the last few rows to complete the last inch that we need. So I've just finished my last decrease row, so that was row 32, and for the last 2 rows, which will finish the last inch that I need to complete the 14 inches, will be just 1 half double crochet in the back loop only. So I'm just going to chain 1 and complete the next 2 rows, 1 half double crochet in the back loop only. Obviously row 34 will technically be the front loop only. Okay, so once you have finished your final row, you're just going to want to chain 1 and fasten off. Like so. So you're going to want to make a second vest panel. You want to make sure that once you have reached row 16 that you are decreasing every single row at one edge to make sure that that is the button edge, and then only every other row on the side edge where the armpit will be. So now we're going to work on the back panel. So for the back panel, you're going to want to make a chain that equals your back panel measurement. So mine was 17 inches, so I made a chain of 70, and that was enough for 17 inches. And then I added an extra chain for the turning chain. You're going to want to repeat the instructions of the front panel for the back panel from row 1 to row 16. So just 1 half double crochet into each stitch, all the way up to row 16, or however many rows you did up until the armpit. And then I will meet you back where we will work on the decrease row, because that is slightly different for the back panel. So it's just rows and rows of half double crochet in the back loop only till row 16, or the armpit area that you did for the front panel. So I will meet you back when I have done that. So I've just finished my 16th row of half double crochet in the back loop, and we're now going to be working on the decrease part. So you're going to want to continue to decrease every other row until you reach the armpit. So I'm going to start row 17 and I'm going to chain 1 and turn the work, and I'm going to make a decrease in the first 2 stitches. So yarn over, make a decrease as we've been doing, and then I'm going to make a half double crochet into the back loop all the way across, and then when I reach the very last 2 stitches I'm going to make that decrease again. Okay, so now I have my last 2 stitches, I'm going to make my decrease. Okay, and that is the decrease row for the back panel, and then for row 18 I'm going to chain 1 and I'm going to turn the work, and I'm going to just make 1 half double crochet into the front loop of each stitch all the way across. And then I'm going to alternate between row 17 and row 18 up until I reach row 32, just like I did with the front panel. So make sure that you are doing the exact same amount of decrease, alternating rows as you did for your front panel, to make sure that it's even. So I'm going to meet you back once I have finished row 32. You just need to continue to make alternating rows, a decreased row and then a normal row until you reach the armpit. So I've just completed my 32nd row. I'm now going to start row 33. So I'm just going to chain 1 and turn the work. You're going to want to take note of how many stitches you had in your last row of the front panel. So as you can see here, I have 6 stitches left in the last row of the front panel. So I'm going to want to make sure that that is what I have for the strap at the back of the vest. So I'm going to make 5 half double crochets, and then I'm going to make a decrease stitch, and that is going to help make a slope kind of edge and makes it a little bit more seamless. So technically we will be making 6 half double crochets in the back loop, but the last one is a decrease and it just helps with the shape. So I'm going to yarn over and make my 5 half double crochets in the back loop. And then I'm going to make a decrease stitch, so I'm just going to half double crochet in the back loop 2 stitches together, and then we have 6 in the row. And then I'm going to chain 1 and turn the work, and I'm just going to do 6 half double crochets in the front loop. Okay, and that is row 34 all done. So I'm now just going to chain 1 and fasten off. So we now need to make the strap for the other side. So I'm going to make a slip knot with my yarn, and I'm going to attach it to the 7th stitch from the edge. So I'm going to count 7 stitches, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that's right here. I'm going to join the yarn to the 7th stitch from the edge, and I'm going to chain 1 just to secure it. I'm then going to make a decrease stitch in the same stitch that we have, so I'm going to yarn over and in the back loop start my first half double crochet. Just going to weave that end in, and then I'm going to make my second half double crochet in the next stitch, and then I'm going to crochet them together. So I'm just going to pull through all 5 loops, and then I'm going to make 1 half double crochet into the last 5 stitches. Okay, so that is going to create a slope, and then for the last row I'm going to chain 1 and turn the work, and I'm just going to make 1 half double crochet in the front loop only of the next 6 stitches. Okay, and then I'm just going to chain 1 and fasten off. You're just going to want to make sure that in your final 2 rows you have the same amount of stitches, so you need to make sure that you are counting back the correct amount. So let's say, for example, in your final front panel row you had 8 stitches, you are going to want to count back 9 stitches from the edge and then make a decrease and then continue to make 7 half double crochets. So you're now going to want to place all of your panels on top of each other. I've got everything on the inside out, so all of your neat sides need to be on the inside, and all the wrong sides need to be on the outside. And we're now going to join the tops of the panels together. So I'm going to take my main colour and I'm going to make a slip knot. And then I'm going to attach my hook into the first sort of side loop of the front panel. So I'm going to ignore the actual stitches and I'm just going into a side loop, and I'm going to do the exact same thing for the back panel. So I'm just going to kind of find that side loop there, and I'm just going to attach the slip knot onto the hook and pull through both of those side loops and then chain 1 to attach. So now we're going to be making a single crochet through both panels, weaving in these ends. So I'm going to insert the hook into the first stitch of the first panel and the first stitch of the back panel right there, and I'm going to loop these ends over so I can crochet them in, and then I'm just going to make a single crochet, and then into the next stitch, inserting the hook into the first stitch, the next stitch of the front panel and the next stitch of the back panel, so that's right here, and make a single crochet. So I'm going to continue this all the way across. Okay, and then I'm just going to chain 1 and fasten off, and then I'm just going to cut that loose end that we was weaving in. Like that. I'm just going to cut the other small piece. Okay, so I'm now going to complete this on the other side. I'm just going to make a slip knot and attach it to the sort of side loop of the front panel and the side loop of the back panel. Pull through and then chain 1, and then just make a single crochet through both panels all the way across. Okay, and then just chain 1 and fasten off, and then I'm just going to cut that loose end. Okay, so don't worry too much about these tails, we will be weaving those in later on. So we are now going to attach the side panels together. So you're just going to want to line the panels up. Remember that everything is on the inside out, and you're going to start where we started decreasing, and we're going to crochet down. So we started decreasing at the 17th row, so I'm going to count up to the 17th row, or whatever row that was for you. Okay, so here is the 17th row. I'm going to just insert my hook into that 17th row so that I can mark it, and then I'm going to count the same for the back panel. So I'm just going to insert my hook there to mark it. Make a slip knot and pull the slip knot through both panels like that, and chain 1 to secure it. So now I'm basically just going to single crochet down this edge, and I'm kind of going into each side loop. So I'm just going to find the next side loop of the front panel and the next side loop of the back panel, and insert my hook, and then I'm going to make a single crochet. Okay, and then into the next sort of side loop and the next side loop and then make a single crochet. So I'm going to continue this all the way down, making single crochets through both panels. So now I'm just going to chain 1 and fasten off, and you're just going to want to repeat the exact same process on the other side to attach the side panels together. So this is what it's looking like when all of the side panels are attached. You're now going to want to flip your work so that everything is on the right side out. We're now going to be working on the armhole ribbing, so I'm going to grab my second colour. I'm going to be using like a dark berry red for that. So you're going to want to grab your second colour for the ribbing. I'm going to make a slip knot. I'm then going to attach the slip knot to the bottom of the armhole, right where the armpit is. I'm going to insert my hook right there, and then I'm going to pull the slip knot through, like this. I just wanted to add a quick side note that throughout the part where I am showing you how to make the armhole ribbing, I do make a chain of 8, however I ended up not liking how thick the ribbing looked for this, so I ended up only doing a chain of 4, but the pattern still applies for any number. You just want to make a chain of the thickness you want and then an extra chain for the turning chain. So I ended up only doing 4 chains because I didn't want the armhole ribbing to be as thick as the main part of the ribbing. You're then going to want to make a chain that equals the thickness of the ribbing that you want. So I wanted my ribbing to be about 1.5 inches thick, so I'm going to make a chain that equals 1.5 inches. So for me that was about 8 chains. You want to add an extra chain for the turning chain, like this. And now we're going to start crocheting down the chain. So you're going to want to flip your chains over so that the back bumps are revealed. And I'm going to make 1 single crochet into the second back bump from the hook. So not the first back bump, but the second back bump. Okay, make a single crochet. I'm then going to make 1 single crochet into each back bump across the row. Once you have completed your 8 single crochets, I'm then going to make 2 slip stitches. So I'm going to make a slip stitch into the next sort of space, like that, and then I'm also going to make a slip stitch into the next space. Okay, and that is the end of row 1. So for row 2 I'm going to turn the work, and I'm going to skip the first 2 slip stitches, and I'm going to make 1 single crochet into the front loop of each stitch across. So that's 8 single crochets in the front loop. There's 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, once you have reached the end of the row, I'm going to chain 1 and turn the work, and I'm just going to make 1 single crochet into the back loop of each stitch across, and then I'm going to make 2 slip stitches into the next 2 spaces. Sorry, 1 slip stitch into the next 2 spaces. Okay, and then 2 slip stitches. That's 1, that's 2. So I'm now going to be repeating rows 2 and row 3 all the way around until I reach back to the beginning again. So I will come back when I have come back to the beginning, and I will show you how to complete the ribbing. Okay, so I've just finished my last row. I'm now going to join the panels together. So I'm going to basically flip the work so that we are now working on the inside out, like this, and then I'm just going to single crochet through both sides. So I'm going to skip those 2 slip stitches, and I'm going to go into the first stitch, and I'm going through both loops, and I'm picking up the next stitch on the other side, and then a single crochet. And I'm going to do this all the way across to each stitch, make a single crochet through both. Okay, and then when you have joined everything together, I'm just going to chain one and fasten off. As you can see, this has all joined together, and I'm just going to cut that first little bit, and then you can just weave this tail in. Now if you're noticing that the ribbing is curling slightly and you're using acrylic yarn, then you can steam it and it will kind of go back a little bit, or you could do a row of single crochet around the edge, but like I said, I didn't want the ribbing to be too thick, so I'm just going to steam this at the end when everything's all done so that the ribbing is nice and flat, because as you can see it's curling a bit. So I'm going to repeat this now on the other side for the other armhole, and then I'll come back and I will show you how to do the ribbing across the bottom and then around to the edge. Okay, so I've just finished doing the armholes, and I've just placed 3 stitch markers on the right side of the right panel where I want my buttons to go, and I just separated them out equally. And then on the other side, when we do the ribbing, we will be making 3 gaps for where the buttons will then attach. So I'm going to repeat the process that we did for the armhole, where I basically attach the yarn at the bottom of the front panel. I'm going to make a chain of 8, I'm going to crochet down the chain, and then I'm going to slip stitch 2, turn the work and crochet across the row again, chain 1, turn the work, crochet across the row, and then slip stitch 2 all the way up, and leave the stitch markers where they are because that's going to obviously mark where we sew the buttons on. Continue that all the way up around this side, all the way around the back around this side, and I'm going to meet you back once I reach this part here, because from this section downwards we're going to be adding holes. So I'm basically going to repeat the pattern for the armhole, attaching it here, crocheting all the way up around, and then I'm going to stop at the left panel corner here. So I've just finished all of the ribbing around the edge, and then I've stopped when I got to row 17 of the front panel, and then this is where we will be making the buttonholes. So in every buttonhole row you will be skipping a few stitches, and then instead of making the single crochet into the stitches, you'll just be making a chain instead of it. So I'm going to start the next row, so I'm going to chain 1, turn the work. So you're going to want to grab your button and work out how many chains that you will need for the button. So my button's quite small, and I worked out that I roughly only need 2 chains and to skip 2 spaces for the button to fit through nicely. So since I have 8 stitches in my row, I'm going to be leaving 2 of those out to skip, which means that I have 6 left, so I'm going to be having 3 on each side that I crochet into normally. So I'm going to just crochet into the first 3 normally. 1, 2, and 3. So now I know that the button is going to sit technically where these 2 stitches are. So I'm skipping these 2 stitches, I'm going to chain 2, and then I'm going to make my last 3 single crochets into the last 3 stitches. So 1, 2, and 3. You need to make sure that the amount of stitches that you skip is the same amount of chains that you make. So you don't want to make too many chains and then it's not skipping enough stitches. So if you have a bigger button, then you might only need to do 1 single crochet at either end, and then skip however many are in the middle, and obviously make that chain where you're going to skip them. So as you can see, when I place my button over it, it fits through nice and comfortably. So that is the buttonhole row, and then I would just slip stitch into the next sort of 2 spaces as normal. And then I would turn the work, and I'll go into the first front loop of the first stitch. So I'm going to make my single crochets into the front loop, and then we have reached the chain 2, and I'm just going to make my single crochet into each chain. And then my last 3 single crochets in the front loop. Okay, so that is what the buttonhole is looking like. And then I'm going to just continue making rows of the normal ribbing until my work reaches all the way down to the next stitch marker, and then I will make another buttonhole row. So I'm going to meet you back once I have finished all of my buttonholes, and then I'll show you how to do the bottom ribbing. So I've just finished my final row of the ribbing, and I just did one slip stitch for the final row instead of two, and then I'm just going to chain one and fasten off. So we're now going to be starting the bottom ribbing, so I'm basically just going to start in the corner of the last row that we just did. You could also start in this corner if you are right-handed. You would just make a chain and then crochet down the chain and create the ribbing, but just going in this direction instead. But yeah, I'm going to be starting in the one I just finished on. So I'm going to grab my red colour and make a slip knot. And I'm going to join the yarn into that very first stitch we made. I'm going through both loops. So, and then I'm just going to make a chain of 8 plus 1, because this is I want it to be the same thickness as we did around the middle of the ribbing. So I'm going to make a chain of 8. And then I'm going to add an extra one for the turning chain, just like we did before. And then I'm going to make one single crochet into the second back bump. And then I'm going to make one single crochet into each back bump all the way across. So I've just done my 8 single crochets, and then I'm going to slip stitch into the next 2 stitches across the row. So it's like the same as before, but we're now kind of working across this edge rather than across the edge here. For row 2, I'm just going to turn the work as normal. I'll weave this end in as I go, and then I'm going to make one single crochet into the front loop only, again skipping those slip stitches, just making one single crochet into the front loop all the way across. Okay, and then I'm going to chain 1 and turn the work, and I'm going to make one single crochet into the back loop only of each stitch. And then I'm going to slip stitch into the next 2 stitches to complete the row. So I'm just going to continue to repeat row 2 and 3 all the way across the bottom of the vest, and then when I have reached the other end of the vest here, I'm just going to chain 1 to fasten off and then weave in those ends. So I will meet you back once I have reached the end here. So now I have all of the ribbing finished. I'm now going to be sewing on the buttons, and I did steam the vest before I did this, just so that the ribbing laid a little bit flatter, because it was curling and it was going to be really hard to sew the buttons on that way. So I have steamed everything and I have finished all the ribbing across the bottom. So I'm now going to be sewing on the buttons where I placed each stitch marker down here, roughly sort of in the middle, and I'm just going to be using the exact same yarn that I used for the ribbing and a sewing needle, and I'm literally just going to sew each button on in the centre of the ribbing where I put each stitch marker. So I've just sewed all the buttons on. Here's what they are looking like, and I'm just basically going to weave in any of the loose ends that we have now, just with a smaller hook. So I'm just going to weave them in with a 3.5mm hook, just so it's easier, and then I will show you the final result, and I will show you what it looks like on with an outfit. And this is what the final result is looking like. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing and giving this video a thumbs up, and I will see you in the next one. Bye guys.